All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be this a little bit. There you go. It's going to be below the video. If you are on a smaller screen, like a mobile device, if you're on a larger screen, like a desktop, laptop, computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So let me scroll down here, see who we'll be starting with. We're starting here with Duke V. So if you happen to post your question on here before 10 a.m. Eastern time, just go ahead and repost your question on there. The reason why I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before is I'm trying to answer questions for people who I think are actually here waiting to see your question get answered. If you post your question last night or something like that, the odds are you're not here. So, but if you are and you're waiting, just copy and paste your question there. We will answer it later on the office hours. So Duke V says, what is the difference between taking the club back inside and laying the club off? Should I take the club straight up and then lay it off? So that's a good question. So the difference between taking the club inside, when we're talking about taking the club inside, generally it means initially in your takeaway. Are you bringing this club inside, which would be over here, right, away from the ball, or or basically inside the hands on this side of the hands? Outside of the hands would be taking the club outside, and then this would be kind of on plane, basically taking it right up the hands. Essentially, if you see it's by the time it's right here, it's in line with the hands. That would be kind of like an on plane kind of takeaway. So when we're saying laid off is a position that's at the top of the swing. And generally it means that this club, the position of the club, if you're a right-handed golfer, will be pointing on to the left of the target. So this would be laid off. This would be what would be referred to as across the line, where it's pointing to the right of the target for a right-handed golfer. And then this would be basically in line with your hands, so on and so forth. So if you bring this club way inside, when you're bringing this club up to the top, generally it's going to have momentum that's going to take the club, that's going to make the club want to go across the line. It doesn't mean that you can't bring the club inside and lay it off. There are players. Daniel Berger, I believe, brings the club a little inside and then he has it laid off at the top. JB Holmes is a player that brings the club inside and has it kind of in a laid off position on the top. So it's not to say that you can't. It's just you want to go across the line or bring your hands up over the top or things like that. So in general, it's typically easier to get the club, working in a laid off position if you're wanting to get to that kind of position at the top. If the club's working more outside, kind of like a Matt Wolff, right? So Matt Wolff brings the club way up like that, and then he really lays it off as he's starting down, really shallows it out. Or if you're getting the club to work up the plane, because then there's not going to be any forces that are going to make it want to go that way, and you can more easily get it to work where you want to go. So that's basically the difference between those. All right, so let's keep moving here. So Sunil N says, hi, Q. On the takeaway, my left arm seems to bend if I rotate to my maximum. On the takeaway, I can keep it straight if I don't rotate on my maximum. Rotate to my maximum. What are you rotating exactly? What's more important, more rotation and slightly bent left arm, or not as much rotation and keep the left arm straight on the takeaway? I would say more rotation and slight bend, but I'm not sure exactly what's going on in your swing. When you're saying rotation, like what exactly are you talking about? But basically, we want to be rotating, and you can have some bend in that lead arm if you want. We just don't want excessive bend. If we get a lot of excessive bend, if you're kind of like this at the top of the swing, typically if you're like this, it's because you're not rotating very much, right? But if you're like this, you're going to tend to want to cast the club in the downswing. But if you're kind of like this, where you have a slight bend in the arm, I mean, this is at the top of my swing, I have a slight bend in my arm. Clay has a little bit of a slight bend. Robin does. Lots of tour players do. If you look at Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Angel Cabrera, there's a lot of players out there that have a slight bend. And typically most players don't have their arm dead straight. There are a lot that do, but most players really don't. And the reason why a lot of times it looks like it's dead straight is because their arm is rotated like this. So if you see, if I have a little bit of bend in my arm, I have it straight up and down, and then I rotate my arm like that, my arm looks dead straight, right? But it's really not. It's actually got some bend to it. So because players are shallowing out the club, a lot of times that arm looks like it's straighter than what it actually is. Most players do have a little bit of bend in that arm. And it's really completely natural. It's where we really break it down and get it really where it's really bent that you can run into some issues. So as long as you're not doing that, I would say you're in good shape. So Larry S. says, how and when do I engage my hips in my swing? Should it be something I think about, or should it be natural? So that's a good question. So feel is relative. And that's one thing that we have to understand is that feel is relative. What you may need to feel and what I may need to feel in the swing are two completely different things. And here's how you know. If you go through the Top Speed Golf system, we talk about how the hips should be rotating open and things like that. And if you're seeing on video that your hips are not rotating, maybe you're coming into impact and you look like this, right? No hip rotation. Your hips are square to the ball at impact, and that's what feels natural to you, then you're going to need to think about it to change it, right? You will need to think about it. But if you look at impact and you see that your body is opening up as you come into impact, and that's what feels natural to you, then it isn't something that you need to think about. It is something that comes natural to you, right? So there's no way for me to know without seeing your swing and seeing some things that are going on. But that's basically what it comes down to. If you aren't doing what if you're not doing what you want to be doing, then you're going to need to think about it to make it happen. It's not going to happen just on its own natural. You're going to have to think it until you don't anymore. So basically you have to go through the stages of learning. So the first stage is that you are basically, there's 4 stages of learning. The first stage is called unconscious incompetence. This is where you're unaware that there's even anything about the hips that you need to be doing. You're just turning your hips and you don't even know that what you're doing is right or wrong. You're completely unaware, right? And then the second stage is when you become aware. This is what's called conscious incompetence. You become aware, but you don't know what to do. And this may be the stage that you're in right now. The stage after that would be where you are aware of it, right? And you're able to do it, but you have to think about it in order to do it, right? So this is called conscious competence, where you can do it, but you have to think about it in order to do it. And then you eventually move into the last stage, which is called unconscious competence. This is where you do it automatically. It's completely natural, and it takes time to get there. So you have to work through those stages in learning. And this is where you work through the Top Speed Golf system. We started working on this in the power turn course, where we do some reps where we go up to the top, and then you come to impact, and you pause at impact, hips open, shoulders square, and then you go through and into the full finish. We talk about that in there. We talk about it in the stable fluid spine course, the third level, where we talk about getting our spine angled away and the body opening up. We talk about it in all these things. Really, how you engage them or what you do to engage them is you have to get a proper weight shift, right? So we need to make sure that we're getting to a good weight shift to our lead side. So that, because if we don't get a weight shift to our lead side, we can't really get into the ground and grip the ground to be able to open up the hips, right? So we need to get to a good weight shift to the lead side. That's really the key. And then we need to push into the ground to rotate the hips back and out of the way. That's really how you have to work through it. So what I'd recommend doing first is taking the club out of your hands and so that way you can really focus on how the hips are moving and really work on getting the hips to move the right way. Now, there could be things going on with your arms and things like that don't allow you to get that club in the right position. So, for example, let's say that you're coming down steep, right? Well, if you're coming down steep, this club is in a steep position. It's more vertical position at this point in the swing. Well, you're going to tend to want to stand up in the start of the downswing and not rotate your hips. So if you're not sure what to do to engage your hips and get things working the right way, I would recommend working with an instructor to get that happen, to where they can actually see your swing and help you get to where you want to go. So that's what I would recommend doing to know for sure. But if without knowing for sure, I'd recommend taking the club out of your hands. We have tons of videos on the website. Search hips on the website. Tons of drills on the website to help you. Take the club out of your hands at first and do the drills so you can really just focus on the hips and then add the club. And if you find that the arms and the hands and the things like that, the structure that you're creating at the top is like you're coming down steep, you're seeing that on video, I would try to get that in order first, because that's going to encourage you to get your body to open up. If you're like this, you're going to be encouraged to not open up. You're going to be encouraged to thrust your hips and throw the arms. Whereas if you have the club more behind you, you're going to be encouraged to open up so that you can get the club to the ball. So those would be things that I'd be looking at in your swing. But like I said, I wish I could tell you for sure what you need to work on, but fortunately there isn't any way for me to know for sure. All right, so Mushtack S says, "Hi Q, please explain what can be inferred from the divot. Mine tend to be toward the left and struggle to have a straight divot." Yeah, so that's a good question. So obviously your divot can tell you if you're chunking it or not, right? If your divot is well before the golf ball, then that's an indication that you're chunking it. It can tell you if you're coming down really steep or not, chopping down into the golf ball. If you have a really deep divot, that's an indication that you're really kind of chopping down into the ball. The direction of your divots can tell you the path of your club, right? Whether you're swinging to the left, your divots are typically going to be to the left. If your swing direction is to the right, right, you're typically going to have that sort of thing. So if you're saying that your divots are pointing to the left, so that's an indication that you're kind of coming over the top, right? Your path is to the left. You're typically going to struggle with pulls. You're going to struggle with slices a lot of times. You may struggle with toe strikes. Those all may be things that you may be struggling with and can be inferred by your divot. So getting that divot to be more more to the right, can help you to get rid of that, right? So that's basically, what you can be inferred from that. Now you got to be careful with that, because just for example, just because your divot is to the left a little bit doesn't mean that your path is to the left. And that's because this club works around our body, right? My club's working to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. It's turning the corner. Now it's turning to the left, to the left, to the left. So if I'm trying, let's say I'm trying to hit a draw, right? If I'm trying to hit a draw, then my path when I hit the golf ball should be a little bit to the right, because I need to swing into out with a little bit of a closed face to get the ball to draw, right? So just to exaggerate that, I need to swing into out with a face that's closed to my path to get the ball to curve, to get it to draw. So when I hit the ball, that's what needs to happen. Your divot should be occurring after the golf ball, right? So if my divot is straight, right, you can have a divot that is dead straight. It's after the golf ball. It's after you contacted the ball, and you can have your path be to the right, because the club can be coming in, hitting the golf ball, then starting to turn the corner and go to the left, and then it can hit the ground and make a divot. Just like I can have my path be actually, if I were to chunk the ball, right, my path would start back here. My divot would start back here before the golf ball, and it may be going to the right and then to the left, and it may give you this idea that you're swinging into out, but the reality is that you may be swinging on plane or over the top by the time you get to the golf ball. So you got to be a little bit careful with the direction of the divots. Typically, if you're making really good contact with the golf ball, your divot, if your swing direction is straight, your divot will actually be typically a little slightly left of the target because the club is working back to the left as it comes around your body. So if I come in here, I have a perfect path, right? I'm coming in here dead straight. I contact the ball, and then my path can continue to work just a little bit to the left if I'm dead straight. If I'm trying to hit a fade, then I hit it solid, then my path will be more to the left. And if I'm trying to hit a draw, it'll either typically be straight or slightly to the right as I'm coming through contact, if I'm making solid contact with the ball. So one other thing that you can look at and see in your divots is heel down or toe down. Typically what you're going to notice is toe down. So that's if your divots aren't square, right? So if your divots aren't square and you're coming in and you're seeing that they have kind of a point to them. So the right side of if you're right-handed, the right side of your divot is starting first, and then the left side comes in. That's an indication that you have early extension, right? I'm coming in and my toe is getting down, right? And my toe is contacting the ground first, and then my heel is coming in to the ground after that. So it's going to be difficult. If you have a toe down divot, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make solid contact for a couple of reasons. One, when you have a toe down divot, that raises the sweet spot, right? So if my club's coming down flush like that, then my sweet spot's just a little bit above the ground. But if I have it coming down toe down like that, my sweet spot's up here. So you're going to tend to hit the ball very thin if you have a very toe down divot because that sweet spot's being raised up. It also can open the face a little bit, right? So if you're struggling to get the face closed and you have a toe down divot, that could be part of the reason why, because if I put my angle finder on here and I just have it flush to the ground like this, going dead straight, and then I have a toe down divot, you can see that opens my face a little bit. So it can make things a little bit more difficult. Not to mention, the club not coming down nice and flush. So ideally what you want to have is a nice kind of dollar bill size divot, nice and square. That's an indication that your club is coming down nice and flush. And you want to just be kind of shaving that top layer of the turf off. You don't want to be, taking like a really deep divot, because that's an indication that you're hitting down on the ball a lot, and you're going to be losing compression typically if you're hitting really down on the ball a lot. Now, you may see a lot of tour players, with wedges especially, they'll take these big divots, and a lot of that is because of the leading edge of the club is very sharp, right? So you have, versus, this is a wedge. You can see, I'm just going to be able to come in and just scoop right through there, and my club's just going to glide through that turf. And that's typically what you're seeing there. You're not typically seeing divots like that if they're hitting like a 5-iron, right? They're usually taking those nice kind of dollar bill kinds of divots, the nice shallow ones. Trying to think if there's anything else that can be inferred from a divot. Another thing could be a lack of a divot, right? So if you're not taking a divot at all, and you're hitting the ball semi-solidly, maybe thin, that is usually an indication that you're releasing the club early, right? That you're coming in and releasing the club early. The reason for that is that when you release the club early, that really shallows out your angle of attack, and it doesn't allow you to really take a divot and hit the ball. Because if you took a divot, you would likely hit behind the golf ball because you're coming in so shallow. The club's coming in so level. So basically, it forces your best case scenario is to kind of sweep the ball off the turf. So that would typically be an indication of an early release. Now, keep in mind that pretty much all these things that I mentioned can be seen on video, right? These are things that if you're looking at your swing on video, you most likely already know. You most likely already know that you have early extension. You most likely already know that you have an early release. You most likely already know that you're coming over the top or too much from the inside. These are all things that can be seen on video if you video your swing frequently, which you should be if you're going through the Top Speed Golf system and doing what we're talking about on the website. But they can be good on the course, to be able to see, okay, I need to get I've been working on my early extension. It's been getting better. And then you notice you have a really toe down divot or something like that. And, you realize, okay, well, I'm coming up out of it a little bit. I need to make sure I'm getting that heel down a little bit. So Lee G says, in the lag video, Clay says the shoulders should be square at impact. Does that mean square to the ball, square to the hands, square as in the shoulders should be level? It means as in square to basically the target line, right? So square to the ball, essentially. So, and they can be slightly open. It's just a drill to help you kind of sync up your body a little bit. Because it's easier to tell you, okay, you want to have your hips open 45 degrees and your shoulders square, than to tell you, okay, you want your hips to be 45 degrees and your shoulders slightly open, right? It's just a drill to help you kind of be in a better position. But typically, when you look at tour players are going to be anywhere from square shoulders to slightly open shoulders. If they're really trying to cut the ball, they might be a little bit more open than that. But when I'm talking about shoulders, when you're looking at the target line. So if I'm coming in, right, like this would be pretty square shoulders right here. I can be anywhere from here to slightly open. Now, keep in mind here that your shoulders are independent from your chest. Your shoulders are going to be at a different angle than your chest because your shoulders can move independent of your chest. So your shoulders can protract and retract. So what protraction is when your shoulder moves away from your spine, right, your shoulder blade, and then retraction is when your shoulder blade moves toward the spine. So if I can actually stand here right now and have my chest pointing straight toward my door over here, and I can protract my lead shoulder and retract my trail shoulder, and it looks like my shoulders are very open. But that my chest is still square over here, but my shoulders are actually very open. And that's what's happening when you come into impact. Your chest should be coming into impact 20, 30 degrees open here, but your shoulders should be fairly square to slightly open because your lead shoulder is protracted. That's going to get it to where it's on a different angle from your chest. If I were to get to impact, right, here I am at impact, right, and I have my shoulders pretty square here. And then I take my lead shoulder and I go like that. Well, now my shoulders don't look square, do they? They look like they're very open. That's the difference, right? So that's one thing you want to keep in mind. The shoulders and the chest are not the same thing. Your chest should be pointing well in front of the golf ball. Your shoulders will be square, fairly square to slightly open to that target line. When you're looking at the best players, that's typically what you see. So Richard H says, Q being ball bound was mentioned earlier. I don't remember that. This is something my PRGR shows I suffer from. Negative 10 mile per hour difference. Any recommendations on how to overcome this? So I guess I'm not really sure what question he's referring to from earlier. But as far as overcoming being ball, typically when you say you're ball bound, it's typically you're not using your body and you're just using all arms and throwing the club. So the way that you overcome that is to exaggerate the opposite. I would really try to feel like your body is the only thing bringing the club into the golf ball. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. You can fix any issue in the golf swing by exaggerating the opposite. So if you're ball bound, that means, in my opinion, or from what I understand, is that, and you may mean something different to you, but when someone tells me that they're ball bound, this is generally what I think. I think that they're at the top of the swing, and then when they start down, they are throwing the club. Right? There's no body rotation. So what would be the opposite of that? The opposite of that would be getting here and then feeling like it's only the body that's bringing. Now, that's not the reality of what's going to happen, right? But that's what you need to feel to make that happen. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result. To fix something, you exaggerate the opposite, right? To fix it. And then if you actually do it, then you ease off of it. But odds are typically you're just going to be moving a little bit closer to where you want to go. So that's how I'd work through that. We have and there's things that are going on in your swing that could be specific to you that you may need help with. So casting would be one. That's the top speed lag course. The straight line release could be another. Once you get that lag happening, you want to release that out in front, and that comes from getting the body and the club to sync together. So working through the top speed golf system in general is going to help you to get rid of that ball bound. But the best advice I can give you right now, without seeing your swing, is to exaggerate the opposite. Feel like the body is bringing the club into the ball, and your arms and your hands, they don't throw the club at all. It's just the body that brings it in. And what will likely happen is you'll get closer to where you want to go. The reality is that you likely will not just have the body bring the club into the ball. But if you do, then just ease off of that feeling a little bit to get to where you want to be. So Michael S. says, hi, Q, could you explain how best to assure that the left heel stays stable at the end of the right-handed swing? That the left heel stays stable at the end of the right-handed swing. Well, it depends on what's going on in your swing. Typically, if I see people coming off of their heels, it's because of early extension. So what that means is that when we're starting down, our hips are moving toward the ball, right? So we're kind of getting out on our toes a little bit, right? So that's typically why I see people get off balance, is because their hips are kind of thrusting forward, and then they kind of end up coming off their heels and getting off balance. So if that's the case for you, then I'd be looking at working through our stop early extension course to make sure that you're kind of staying in your posture a lot better in the downswing. One other thing you may want to feel like when you're working through that course is that when you get your weight shift to the lead side, I'd really try to feel like you're driving that heel into the ground, and you're feeling like you're finishing in your left heel when you come through into the full finish. So that'd be one kind of a quick tip to help you get there. But the stop early extension course is more than likely what's going to help you to get to the heel as well. One other thing might be the move, because a lot of the reason why people stop early extend is because the club is steep. When the club is steep like this, meaning it's more in a vertical position when you're starting the downswing, a lot of times what people will do as a reaction to this is they'll move their hips toward the ball, and what that does is that moves this club to where it's in a more shallow position later in the swing, so that way you can hit a functional shot. If I were to start down steep here and then stay steep, I'm typically going to swing, hang back and swing over the top. So a lot of people, to get this club back on plane, will shallow it later by really thrusting the hips forward. And when you thrust the hip forward, you're coming off your heels, right? So the move course, the stop early extension course would be two courses I would look at in your swing to see what's going on there. Without seeing your swing, it would be really hard for me to know what specifically needs to work for you. But if you want to check out either of those courses, I'd highly recommend checking them out. It's a series of drills that are going to help you out, get to where you want to go based on what's going on in your swing. So to look at that, I click the house icon and at the top of the page there. That'll take you to the home page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Take a look at some of those videos in there, and take a look at videos of your swing and see what's going on there. If you'd like me to take a look at your swing and tell you, okay, you need to work on this, and give you a series of drills that's specific to you, then I would recommend signing up for my unlimited swing reviews. Now, I don't have any spots available right now for my swing reviews. So just join my waiting list, and then I probably won't open up spots for another few weeks. But join my waiting list, and that way, whenever I open up spots, you'll get an email whenever new spots are available. All right, so next question here. So we just got one more question here. If you got more questions, go ahead and post them. So Tom S. says, can you talk about the importance of having flex in the knees in order to get the hips to open through impact? Should the amount of flex change during the swing? Thanks. Yeah, we can't keep the knees locked. If we keep the knees locked, that's going to make it really, really difficult to turn. So if I sit here like this and I keep my knees locked and I don't let the flex of my knees change, well, I'm going to have a hard time turning. I need to let my trail in the backswing, I need to let my trail leg kind of straighten out a little bit to turn my hips. And I need my lead leg to kind of move in and flex a little bit more. I need it to move like that. I need it to flex a little bit more as I'm going up to the top. That's going to help me to rotate. So that's really, really important, not just for opening up the hips in the downswing, but it's really, really important for getting a good power turn. This is something we talk about in the top speed golf system. The second piece of the top speed golf system, I need to free up my hips to get my shoulders to turn as much as I need to. Typically, tour players are turning their hips around 50 degrees when they're turning back, right? So I definitely need to have that. I need to have those hips turning. Now in the transition, what I need to do is I need to, what I would call sit and rotate. And what that's doing is I need to now reflex my legs from there. So I need to turn my hips back to square as I'm kind of sitting down and getting some extra flex in them. And there's a couple of reasons why we do that. We do that so that we can continue to extend through. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And we also do that so that way we can get lower to the ground, right? If I just go up to let's say I turn my hips properly in the backswing, but then I don't reflex my legs, well, I'm going to tend to kind of extend early, right? I'm going to extend my hips early, and I'm going to early release typically when I do that, right? So I need to get some flex in my legs so that way I can extend later in the swing. You've heard about early extension, right? You've heard that. There's a reason why it's not just called extension. You don't want extension in your swing. It's called early extension because you want extension in your swing. You just don't want it too early. So what extension is, just to go over exactly what that is. Extension is basically where it's where I'm this angle between my legs and my spine here is changing, right? You can see it's getting bigger. So it's smaller and this is bigger. When I go up to the top of the swing, right, and then I squat down, right, this is flexing. I'm flexing into my legs here. I'm making this angle smaller. And then from here, I actually want to extend. So if I don't flex my legs down, then what I'm going to do right away is I'm going to extend. Right? I'm just going to extend right away in the start of the downswing. And if I extend, I have to move my chest away from the ball, and I'm going to really release, hit flips, flip the club, and hit weak shots. So this is really, really important. It's going to be difficult if you don't get some reflex in the legs. It's going to be really, really difficult to get the body to open up. So it's absolutely paramount to making that happen. Now, a good way to work on this, a lot of you have probably seen this drill, chair drill, wall drill, fence drill, whatever you want to call it. And, I have a lot of people ask me, sometimes in office hours, if there's another drill that they can do other than this one. The reason why this one's recommended so much is because it works. And the reason why a lot of people ask for something else is because it's not easy, right? It's not going to make it happen on its own. And I think there's no magic drill that's going to get you moving your hips properly, right? It's going to take hard work and persistence on your part because it's happening in the downswing. When things are happening in the downswing, they're much more difficult to change. Like, it's much easier to change something in your takeaway, in your backswing, than it is to change something in your downswing because things are moving much slower, right? So speed takes away feel. So you can kind of control what you're doing if you're going slower, right? If you're going really slow, you can get your hips to move exactly the way that you want to usually. But the moment you speed that up, you're going to basically fall to your motor pattern, which is what you're trying to change. So to be able to change a motor pattern, which is something that you're doing at full speed, is what your body naturally does at full speed, we have to break it down. We have to go slow. We have to exaggerate the opposite. So what I would do is I would take the club out of the hands and I would get in your golf posture here next to a chair, and I get about a hand width between you and the chair. And that can help you to exaggerate things a little bit. So I'm going to put my arms across my shoulders here. I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to make contact with this chair at the top. You can see as I'm doing that, I'm straightening out my trail leg. My lead leg is bending in a little bit, right? And then as I start down, what I want to do is I want to get both my butt cheeks on the chair as I'm getting back to square, right? So I'm going back to square, and I've got reflex in the legs. And then from there, I'm going to try to push my left, as I straighten my lead leg here, I'm going to push my left my left pant seam on the chair. This is for right-handed golfers. That's going to help me. That's that extension that we're talking about. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to go here, here, and then there, right? We want to go here, here, and then we want to push back. That's what we see in the best players as we're pushing the hip back and out of the way as we're coming through. So it'll take some time and some repetition. Do it without the club, get it to look good without the club, and then add the club in there and get it to look better there. But yeah, that knee flex is absolutely paramount to getting the body to open up for sure. So Steve M says, just curious if you guys run any statistics for the angle degree at point the hands meet the club at impact. This would be for pro golfers, if not at impact. What about address? Not sure if I should hold my hands lower and closer to my body. Thanks. Just curious if you guys run any statistics for the angle degree at the point the hands meet the ball at impact. Guess I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Not sure if you should hold the hands lower and closer to my body at impact. Thanks. Or closer to my body. So generally, the lower your hands are, let's talk about hand path a little bit because I think it can be helpful to understand exactly what's going on. When you look at the best players, your hands are working around your body, right, in a circle, right? We can't have the hands work like that, right? The hands work around your body in a circle. So when we look at the best players, typically what's happening is their hands will actually reach the lowest point about in this area of the swing, right? So the hands are reaching the lowest point right here. The club's about parallel to the ground when that's happening. And when you're looking from face on, the hands are about in front of the trail thigh. From here, they actually start to work up and around. So this is typically where my hands are coming down and they're turning the corner, right? And then my hands are actually going to start to work a left up and around from here. And that's when the club is working down and to the right toward the golf ball, right? So my hands are starting to work down and to the right, and they turn the corner right here, and then they work up and to the left. When my hands are turning the corner, my club is starting to work down and to the right. All right. So when you look at amateur players, a lot of times you see the club and the hands are kind of working. There's not a lot of lag going on there. So you see the club is catching up to the hands as it's turning the corner. So a lot of times you'll see the hands are coming in here and they're turning the corner and they're reaching their lowest point at the same time the club is coming down and reaching the corner. So the club's catching up. So what we have to understand is that the hands are actually working up as the club is working down to the golf ball. So you need to feel like your hands are coming down and getting really low right here, and then working up. Your hands are actually working up through impact as the club is releasing to the ball. So you need to get here, and then with that lead leg, you're pushing up, right? You're pushing up. That's pushing my shoulder up, which is going to bring my hands up and around. And that's going to help me to release the club out in front. So if you look on video and you see that you're releasing the club early, it's because a part of it is because that your hands and club are turning the corner at the same time, right? They're turning the corner at the same time. You need your hands to be working to the left as the club is working out to the right. And that can be a difficult sensation for people to work into their swing. So hopefully that can help you. I'm not sure exactly if that answered your question, but that's typically what you're going to see there is that when the hands are in front of the trail thigh, they're getting right here. That club's usually about parallel to the ground, and you're seeing the hands are actually starting to work up into the left a little bit as the club's working down to the right. We actually have a video on this. It's in the Top Speed Golf System. It's how to release the club with the legs. I don't think it's in the straight line release course, even though it kind of sounds like it should be. I believe it might be in the compression line course, but I'm not 100% sure on exactly where it is. But it's in the Top Speed Golf System somewhere. So if you have more questions on that, let me know. I'm not sure if that answered your question exactly or not, but I'll be happy to give you more information if needed. All right, so Saki K says, Clay did a video, Pitch Like a Pro, I think it was called. In the video, he was chipping with a lob wedge and hitting it no higher than head high and with plenty of spin. I tried to follow what he was doing, yet I was sending it very high. Can you try and show what I should be doing to keep it lower spin? Hope that makes sense. Thanks for the advice. So you're probably early releasing. So if you're doing that and you're flipping the club through impact, you're adding loft, you're going to hit it higher. Clay was also hitting it off of probably a tight lie, which makes the ball sit down a little bit lower, which means the ball is going to hit lower on the face. So if you hit it kind of on the lower grooves, it's going to come out lower as well. So those would be two things I would look at. Are you coming in? Are you opening up your body? And are you getting some forward shaft lean when you're hitting these pitch shots, right? Are you getting some forward shaft lean, getting the hands in front of impact? That's going to de-loft the face and make it come out lower. And what kind of lie are you hitting it on? Are you hitting it on a fluffy lie where the ball is going to make contact higher on the face and it's going to make the ball go higher? Or is it kind of a tight lie where you're hitting it low on the face, which is going to make it come out lower, which is basically what Clay was hitting off of, kind of a tight lie kind of situation. So those would be the things that I'd be looking at to get it to be like what Clay is talking about. Also, if you hit it lower on the face, that's also going to be more spin. It's going to be more spin. Whereas if you hit it higher on the face, it's going to be less spin. So Mark M says, I need to press my hands forward at setup, good or bad. It's really personal preference. It's completely fine to have your hands pressed forward. There's some players that have their hands pressed forward and some players that don't. I personally like, for myself, I like to kind of have my hands in a relaxed position. I don't press my hands forward and I don't move my hands this way. It's where my hands naturally are, right? I'm not purposely putting them in any direction. So if I come into my address position and I have spine tilt, right, my hands are naturally going to be right here. The best way I like to think about it is I like to think about the club being an extension of my lead arm. And if I think about it that way, that's basically my hands are a little bit forward of the ball. If we get really forward like this, if you're really pressing forward, generally you're going to be opening up your body too much at address, and it can make it more difficult to turn back in the backswing. It doesn't mean that you can't hit good shots. It just means that in general, if your body's really open at address, a lot of times you're going to have a harder time getting it to open be open away from the ball in the backswing. So those would be things I'd be looking at. But again, if it works for you, then it works for you. But if you're really opening up your shoulders, generally that can lead to kind of an over the top kind of downswing and make it difficult to get a good turn in the backswing. So Tom S says, what do you think about the advice to keep your back facing the target as long as possible? It depends on why you're doing that. If you're doing that to try to help you to get I think it can help you to get a bigger turn, right? To get your body turning as much as you can. It can help you to maybe get the club shallowing out to start the downswing instead of, because if you're going up to the top and then you're just opening up right away and bringing this club out over the top instead of maybe letting the club shallow a little bit. It really depends on what you're trying to do in your swing. So what we have to understand is that feelings are all relative, and not every feeling is going to work for everybody, and not every feeling is going to be the right feeling. So you have to understand why everything you do in your swing should be to help you hit the ball better, right? So that's why you have to look at, okay, what am I doing wrong, right? What is wrong with my impact, and what can I do in my swing to help with my impact, right? So that has to be specific to what you're trying to do. So if you're someone who's struggling with not turning very much, or you're someone who's struggling with maybe getting the club to work behind you to start the downswing, or things like that, then that could absolutely be a good feeling. But if you're someone who's not struggling with those things, then it may be detrimental, or it may not make any difference at all. So everybody's a little bit different. So, hey, if it works for you and it gives you better impact, then who am I to say that it's wrong? But like I said, everyone's going to be a little bit different with those sort of things. So Mushtack says, hi, Q. Hey, Mushtack, how you doing? Nicholas V says, hi, Q's dog. She says, hello. All right, so next question here. Wiley W says, I'm hitting all of my irons very high, even when I take a pro-style divot. Obviously, my swing plane is too steep. I wouldn't say obviously. What's an easy correction for flattening my swing plane? So one, I would actually look at your swing on video to see what's going on. If you're hitting the ball high, too high, very high, is going to come from usually too much loft. If you actually come down steep, right, you come down steeply into the ball, that actually usually makes you hit the ball lower because your angle of attack is steeper. And a lot of times when your angle of attack is steeper, you de-loft it some, right? So that it may not be, because that's kind of contradictory to what you're saying. Now, you could be steep in transition, which is making you kind of, it may make you stand up and then add loft. That could be what's going on. But if you're hitting the ball too high, it's because of one or two or both of these reasons. One, you're adding loft at impact, meaning you're releasing the club early as you come through impact. The other one would be that you have a lot of speed. If you're hitting the ball higher, if you have more club head speed than your buddies, then typically you're going to hit the ball higher than them, because let's say you launch a ball at the same angle as your buddy. Well, if you have a lot more speed than him, your ball is going to keep climbing in the air and his ball is going to start falling out of the sky. So that could be part of it as well. Now, unfortunately, you're saying what's an easy correction? There's not going to be an easy correction. It's not easy to release the club more out in front. So if you're depending, I would need to see your swing to know exactly what you need to do to get you there. But working through the top speed golf system is going to help you to start releasing that club more out in front. Start looking at your spine angles. Your spine angles isn't necessarily going to fix your early release, but it's going to help you to get to a position where you can fix it. A lot of times you have to start with other things before you're fixing the direct problem. You kind of have to fix the indirect things. And the reason why I say that is that, let's say your spine angle, right, is very vertical as you're coming into contact, right? If you're not angled away, there's no way you're going to be able to get that club to release out in front. So while if you can have your body angled away and still release early, you can't have it the other way around. You can't have your body straight up and down and release the club late. It's just not going to happen. So you need to get your spine angles working better. You need to make sure that you have some lag in the start of the swing, start of the downswing here. If you're casting the club from the very beginning, the odds of you getting any kind of forward shaftling or better release at impact are slim to none. And then I would look at your compression line. If you're bumping your hips forward, right, and not opening the body as you're coming in, there's basically no chance of you releasing that club out in front. So I would look at the pieces of the top speed golf system and see what you need to do to get that going down. And unfortunately, it's not going to be a quick, easy, fast correction. It's going to be a lot of hard work and repetition. And really, I mean, I'll just be honest with you. If you're not willing to put into the work and the repetition to do it, then just be happy with hitting the ball higher. You're just going to hit the ball high. So hopefully that makes sense. But one other way that you can hit the ball lower would be to take take more club and then just choke up a lot, right? So, instead of, let's say you hit your 8-iron 150 yards, but when you hit it 150 yards, it goes a mile in the air. Well, what you could do is you could take your 6 or your 7-iron and choke up on it and don't hit it as hard, and the ball will go lower, right? Take a 3/4 swing and the ball will go lower. That's typically, when I'm playing in the wind and I want to kind of hit a lower shot, that's typically what I do to keep it out of the wind a little bit. Because to me, it's easier than trying to get more forward shaft lean when you're in those lower conditions. Because a lot of times when I try to get more forward shaft lean, I really try to hit kind of a stinger shot. Then this is just me. It may be different for other people, but I don't hit the ball as solid because it's just not something I practiced a lot. I haven't put a lot of time into it. So kind of an easy way to get the ball lower would be to take more club, choke up on the club, and take more like a 3/4 swing, and and basically just kind of hit it like a lower kind of shot. Now, obviously, if you get up to the upper clubs and you don't have a club that you can step up to, it gets more difficult. But for those shorter shots, you can absolutely do that. That would maybe be kind of an easy fix to hit the ball lower. All right, so let's keep going here. So Mushtak S says, hi Q, I hit 100 yards carry with my pitching wedge. What is the distance I can expect with my driver with an efficient swing? Well, if you kind of look at a tour player, if you look at a tour player for a pitching wedge, I believe they're hitting a pitching wedge somewhere in the neighborhood of 135 to 140 yards, right? And then their carry for a driver is 272. So if you kind of extrapolate that, you're looking at, I would guess, somewhere in the 200 yard range, but I don't really know for sure. But that'd be kind of give you an idea. So to help you understand, a better way to kind of figure it out would be you get about 2.6 yards for every mile per hour that you swing, right? So if you swing your driver 100 miles per hour, a good drive would be 260 yards. Right now, it doesn't mean that you can't hit drives over 260 yards. You can catch a tailwind, play at altitude. You can hit a cart path, and you can go forever. And you can also hit a great drive, and it'll go shorter than that. You can play in wet conditions and into the wind, and the ball won't roll at all. But in general, a good drive is going to go about 2.6 yards for every mile per hour. So if you're hitting your pitching wedge 100 yards, I'm not sure exactly what pitching wedge club head speed that would be, but I have to try to figure out what your club head speed with the driver is. And you can use devices like a PRGR or something like that. I will say that 100 yards with the pitching wedge is kind of on the lower side. So you probably have some room to build some distance. And the best way to do that would be working through the 20-minute distance fix to get you some more speed. And then through the 20-minute distance fix, you can get your PRGR or whatever club head speed measuring device that you want. And then, like I said, for every mile per hour, you're looking at about 2.6 yards. But if I had to guess, I would guess around 200 yards. But I'm not 100% sure. So Jeffrey M says, what adjustments do you recommend for hitting into a strong wind? Yeah, so it's exactly what I just talked about there. The key to hitting into the wind is hitting the ball solid. You need to hit the ball solid. If you hit it really thin, then it's going to spin a bunch, and it's just going to kill you. It's just going to, if you hit it off the toe, any mistake, when you hit it into the wind, any mistake that's made by not hitting the ball solid will be multiplied, right? So when you hit it into the wind and you hit it thin and it adds a little bit of spin to it, well, that's going to be multiplied. It's just going to add a lot more spin. It's going to go a lot shorter. If you hit it into the wind and you put a slice on it, right, it's just going to slice even more. A hook, it's just going to hook even more. It just multiplies whatever you do. So the key is really hitting it solid. So typically, like I said, when I'm hitting into the wind, what I'll do is I'll take extra club and I'll choke up on the club and I'll take a 3/4 swing. When you choke up on the club, it gives you, well, taking more club gives you less loft, right? Which is going to be less spin, which is going to help, right? And it's going to help the ball go lower too. So less loft is going to help the ball lower and keep it out of the wind as much. And then choking up on the club is going to help you to gain more control of the club, right? And then taking a 3/4 swing may help you to hit the ball a little bit more solid. Now, some people just taking their full swing may hit the ball more solid, and if that's you, then do that. But if you're taking a 3/4 swing, it helps you hit the ball more solid, then I would do that. So do whatever helps you to hit the ball the most solid. But what I do, extra club, depending how strong the wind is, I might take 2-3 extra clubs. But extra club, to hit the ball lower, choke up on the club about an inch to give me more control, and I'm going to take like a 3/4 swing to give me a little bit more control as well. So that way I can hit the ball solid and really focus on making center face contact on those shots. That's really, really important. Linda K says, hi Q, with the chair drill for hip turn, the weight shift to the front foot happening automatically, or does that have to be a conscious thought? New to TSG, thanks. So nothing, well, we talked about this a little bit earlier. So for some people, it is going to be automatic, and then some people it isn't. The best advice I can tell you, nothing in the swing is really automatic, right? It's automatic if it's something you naturally do and you don't have to think about it. Like if you think about riding a bike, is that automatic, right? If you've learned how to ride a bike, then for you, it feels automatic. But if you've never ridden a bike before, right, is that going to be automatic? No, you're going to have to learn how to do that. So if you're seeing something, if you're not getting a good weight shift in your swing and you want to get a good weight shift in your swing, you can't just wait around and hope it happens automatically. You are going to have to actually go through the process of learning and do some drills to get that to happen. And then you have to think about it until you don't anymore, until basically it becomes unconscious, right? That's how you have to work through it. That's why golf is difficult, because people are already doing it. They're already playing golf, and they're trying to improve aspects of it. So for every aspect of it that you're trying to improve, you have to go through a learning process, right? And people feel like, well, I've already learned golf. Why do I need to go through this process to learn? You're learning a different part of it, right? So if you need to improve your weight shift, you need to go through the process of learning that for your brain to develop the motor pattern to be able to do it. And you have to keep thinking about it until you don't anymore. And I know that may seem like duh, but that's basically what it comes down to. Is you have to keep thinking about it until one day you just do it automatically and you don't have to think about it anymore, right? So nothing is automatic until you've thought it into and made it ingrained, made it second nature. So William S says, having trouble hitting over water. Any advice? The best advice I can tell you is to think about what you want to do and not what you want to do. It sounds like it's kind of like a mental thing. So think about what you want to do and not what you don't want to do. So what that means is a lot of times when people have trouble hitting over the water, it's because they're thinking, don't hit it into the water. Don't hit it into the water, right? Well, what you want to think is what exactly you want to do, right? So I would look at it and say, I want to hit this ball. I'm going to hit this ball, a nice high draw right in the center of the fairway. And that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. I'm going to step up the ball and I'm going to do that. If you have that image in your mind, don't hit it in the water, don't hit it in the water, don't hit it in the water. You're a lot of times you're going to hit it into the water, right? So get the don'ts out of your mind and get in the positive acts that you're going to do. And that should help out quite a bit. So we got a couple more here and then we'll finish up. So Eric P says, what would your recommendation for where to start for someone with zero experience? Just start through the TSG system videos, starting with stable fluid spine. If you're someone who has zero experience, basically never played golf before, like you need to learn grip and setup and all that stuff first. So I would go to the setup vault and make sure that you're all good there. And then I would start working through the Tough Speed Golf system, like what you talked about. So to get to the setup vault, click the instruction tab, then go to the vault categories, and then go to the setup vault and watch some of those videos and make sure that you're setting up properly. You know, you're not standing too close to the ball or too far away. Your ball position is correct. Your grip is correct. That's very, very important. Stance width, posture, all those things are gone over in that section. So make sure that all looks good. Then once that looks good, then I would go to the stable fluid spine and start working through those drills. So last question here is from Robert H. Says, hi, why are my divots aiming left of target, maybe 20 degrees? Because you are more than likely, if you're right-handed, coming over the top, right? So your path of your swing direction of your club is to the left. So you're probably hitting some slices and some pulls if that is the case. So what I'd recommend doing is working on the Never Slice Again course. Even if you're not slicing and you're just hitting pulls or you're just kind of mishitting shots, whatever it might be, that course is going to be all about getting your path to be working more from the inside, basically getting your divots to go to the right. So if you need to work on that, if that is the case, then be working on that Never Slice Again course. To get to the Never Slice Again course, click the house icon at the top of the page there. That will take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Start on that Never Slice Again course. All right, so thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, so 3 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all next time.